At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Here in Greenville County, we have 8 different places where a 911 call can be answered.
It is the largest county in South Carolina. It's a challenge.
The type of information that a telecommunicator gets from Radius Plus is location-based technology. You can see where the caller is, if they have a medical issue, if they speak a different language. They're immediately able to text to that caller in their native language. It reduces response times because it immediately gets first responders where they need to be.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, as well as Rapid Deploy and Carbine, and a big shout out to patrons as always. I would not be able to do what I do if it wasn't for all of you who, and also all of you who are right now listening and sharing, supporting, and all of that. So thank you so very much. I appreciate it more than you know. We've got tons of new episodes that are going to be coming up, and just filling them all up until the new year, which we're not far from. We're just a few days from Thanksgiving, as this is being recorded right now. It's November 23rd. This is a Tuesday, 2021, and then we're not far from 2022. It's crazy how fast everything is moving. It always seems to happen in these last three months with so much stuff going on with holidays. So it is coming up fast, and I am looking forward to 2022. There's so much more stuff that's going to be coming up, new sponsors to be announced, and so much more. So look out for all of that. I'm excited. Also for patrons, a perk that patrons end up getting for patrons only are audio versions of the DRT, which is the Dispatchers Roundtable, and Open Mic. New episodes of the Dispatchers Roundtable coming up as well, and Open Mic is new every week. We check in with everyone on a scale of 1 to 10, how they're feeling, and then we share the lighthearted side of 911. We share the funny stories, and it is always a good time. So make sure to check us out, and that's Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on social media. So on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, as well as Instagram. Every so often I'll go live on Instagram, which is a little different. There's a little bit of some behind the scenes that viewers on Instagram get to see as the promos and everything are going on the main portion of social media. I've got a camera off to the side where it's just me talking to people right before everything else goes live, and I go back and forth. So that's a lot of fun. So make sure to check that out. Again, it's Open Mic Live, and that is Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. If I'm traveling during that week, I end up doing it either Friday or Saturday, and it ends up being a late night episode around 11 p.m. Eastern Time. But as I said, Thursdays, 9 p.m. is the main time for that show. So look out for that. That one's always a good time. My guest today is going to be Erin. and she is an operations manager out of Northwest Central Dispatch System out of Illinois, as well as the Dispatcher of the Year of 2020 from the IAED. Hey, Erin,
Hello.
how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, as I mentioned right off the bat here, you were recognized as the Dispatcher of the Year for 2020 from the IAED. Um, let's talk about that here a little bit. Usually, I wait towards the end, but I want to jump right in and kind of talk about that. And really, how does this even come about? Do you get a phone call or something or an email, and someone say, "Hey, you're getting this honor," and you're just kind of thinking about, wow, what happened? Or how did this happen? Or how does it even work?
I was nominated by a coworker.
Hmm.
She put the submission in at the beginning of the year, and I believe there was either 32 or 33 candidates that internationally that we went up against, and she
Hmm.
had to submit a 911 call that I took that she thought kind of stood out as something that I did well. And she had to write just a summary on why she thought I should do it. I was flattered, obviously, that she took the time to do that.
Hmm.
There's a little bit of a funny story behind it because at our center, we always do a telecommunicator of the year when it's telecommunicator month in April.
Hmm.
I've been nominated here at my center 8 times and I never won.
Oh,
So the
wow.
fact that I did finally get it and on the international level was just kind of ironic and funny. I could never win it in my own center, but I got it there. So it was very gratifying, and especially since it was my last year of being a dispatcher. So before I knew I was getting promoted in January. So
Oh,
it was
that's
a
pretty
good way to
awesome then.
bookend that part of my career. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Exactly. Especially because you had been nominated all those times, and then bam,
yeah,
on a grand stage, if you will,
yes,
that you end up getting this. So when you end up hearing about this, that you're receiving this award from this nomination, you end up going to the conference and everything, and you're brought on
correct.
stage, or what exactly happens?
We went to the conference and it was in Las Vegas. And one of the extra things they did for me was gave me a suite. So I had like a living room and 2 bathrooms and a beautiful hotel room there.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was a nice perk. And yes, they announce you on stage and they play your 911 call. So that was a little unnerving, that part, having to listen to back to it. It was a call that I took actually in 2020 for a husband who found his wife. She hung herself in their garage.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it was tough. And I happened to be working a police channel that day. And usually we don't answer a lot of 911 calls. We have a big enough center where we have dedicated call takers, and then our fire dispatchers answer next. And then police are usually last due to the high radio traffic on a police channel you don't have. So it was tough that I was working that police channel and taking the 911 call for her. But yeah, I mean, her husband was great. He listened and took the instructions while we did everything we could to help her. So, but
Well,
yeah,
congratulations, by the
thanks.
way, of for getting this award and all, but also the work that you put into it. We always say, and a lot of people who don't know, I mean, this job is all about multitasking. So
Right.
if you're on like police radios and all of that, and you're also taking a phone call, I can't imagine. Depending, especially on the area that you're in, if it's you know
Thankfully, they got there pretty
high.
fast. Yeah.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, and the amount of activity that can be going on over the radio and
Yeah.
all, and trying to do this call, especially that type of call at the
Right.
same time, that's got to be, pretty hard to do as it is. But good that they were able to get there right away. Now, so then this is prime like pandemic time, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
still kind of,
Oh, yeah.
there's still a lot going on, but I
You
mean,
bet.
2020, everything was shut down pretty much.
Yeah. So, I mean, the police were starting to back off on, medical calls, just obviously not going unless they could
Hmm.
make a difference in the outcome of the call. But they went on that one, and I believe they were the first ones to get there. So
Wow.
they helped a little bit till the ambulance got there. But yeah, it was. I mean, I'm sure it was a tough time for him and his family, and
Right.
my heart goes out to them. And unfortunately, the outcome wasn't what we would have hoped for. But
Hmm. For sure. Um, well, we'll get into a little bit more of that here as well, because I can only imagine. I have other friends and all that are of are out of Illinois, and a lot of them having to shut down, and so many other things that were going on. I figure it's the same for all of you as well, where
Oh,
you were
yeah.
at during this time. But before we get into some of that, I want to go back in time here and learn more about you, as we kind of build up to this award, and then your transition to what you're doing now there at the center. How did you get into dispatching to begin with?
I was living in a townhouse in the year 2000. My neighbor ended up being a police officer who actually ended up becoming my husband. And
Awesome.
yeah,
That's
and
awesome, for real.
he introduced me to some people, and I started networking with just like other police officers, and somebody said, "Hey, Northwest Central is hiring, you should try and apply." I was currently being a waitress and a bartender at Chili's, really, that was my high peak of my career there. But yeah, I said, yeah, why not? I'll try it. And I applied in 2001, and they did not hire me till 2003.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, I had to wait. I was on the list, and I wasn't at the top of it apparently. So I had
Well,
to wait.
so I guess the good thing in a way, as you're talking about what you were doing, as a waitress and
Yeah.
bartender and such, I mean, it kind of prepared you
Oh
in a
yeah.
way, for some of the shit that you were going to deal with
Right.
over the phone.
Yeah. Instead of in person. Yeah. I mean, customer
Yeah.
service it's in every job, but yes,
hmm
waiting tables I did it for 7 years, and it was probably the best thing that could have got me ready for this for sure. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I took their test and I went on a list, and then they just apparently weren't hiring for a little while. And then I wasn't towards the top. So I had to wait a while, but at least I had a job while I was waiting. So it wasn't like I was, hard up for money, or, I still was
hmm
able to work as a waitress and just wait for my turn. And finally in 2003, they called, and I said, all right, let's do this.
So, what type of tests did you have to take before you end up going onto this waiting list?
There was a typing test. There was like a visual test where you had to watch like a map and kind of like see what would be the closest, more geography driven, to see like what do you think would be the best way for them to get to that call the fastest. And our testing has changed so much in the last 18 years. What they have to do now, I don't know if I could pass it, but yeah, I haven't seen the one that we do now, but I've heard it's very tough. Like our current supervisors, some of them took it this last testing period, and they passed it, but they said it was a lot more going on there.
Oh man.
So yeah, it wasn't a lot, but it was. And then obviously a psych test once you get a preliminary job offer, we had to do that, and then just a health screening and the basic stuff, drug testing. But
And then you go on
then
the
you go
wait
on,
list.
yeah, and then you wait.
Yeah, you go on the wait list after that. So kind of talking about that wait list and everything. Um, During that time in between, did you do like a sit along or anything like that?
Well, I did do a ride along with my neighbor slash my future husband. Yes.
Yeah.
And I did go out with him. And then I became very good friends with one of the dispatchers for his police department. And I went and sat in with her. So I got to see what it was like. Northwest Central did have us do a sit along as well. So we did do that once we had the preliminary job offer. So I had an idea of what was going on, but nothing
So
prepares you.
oh, right. Yeah. Nothing prepares you for when it's you who's doing
Yeah.
it. But when as you go in to do these sit-alongs, um, I mean, what were your thoughts? Like you're going in, and for those who are watching and listening, if you can kind of explain, what it is that you're seeing. Like when you're walking in, like do you
A
see
lot of
multiple
screens.
consoles? A lot of that's what I was gonna say. A lot of screens.
Yes, a lot of screens, and the phone is like something that, it's just not like a regular phone. You're like, well, a lot of buttons, lots of things. It was very overwhelming, very intimidating, but you got to look past that and know that you're going to spend a lot of time training. You're going to
Mhm.
spend a lot of time learning this. It's not like somebody's going to sit you down and say, here's 4 monitors and a phone that looks like it could launch a space shuttle. Now go do it. Like it's not going to be like that. So
Right.
yeah, when I went to, my husband was a single agency at the time. They were just dispatching for themselves. Hers was a little easier to get behind. I was like, okay, it's just they only had the phone rang only once every 15 minutes.
Mhm.
It wasn't as bad. But coming here, I was like, okay, this is a lot more. This is 10 towns, and it was just way more than what I've first seen. So it was a little more overwhelming here than there. So
I can definitely relate because when I first started, it was at a small police department, and there were multiple screens, but it wasn't set up like a bigger console with all the screens in one spot. Like these were 3 or 4 screens separated in different spots, and then it's just one screen that I'm looking at for
right.
dispatching and such. And when I went in for training, so the chief of police, I had been waiting a long time to hear from them as well. Not as long as you. I only waited a couple. I only waited a couple months, and the chief of police shows up at my house and asks if I still want the job. I said yes. He tells me that I'm going to start working that same night.
Oh,
So
geez.
yeah, so I go in, and my trainer is showing me everything. He takes a 911 call. I'm observing him, and then he gets off the call, and then he tells me that I'm next.
Your turn.
Yes, yeah. And I thought he was messing around. I thought he
Yeah.
was playing because I thought there's got to be more to this. And nope, it was my turn. I took the next
Wow.
call, but luckily it was a misdial, so it wasn't really
Oh,
anything.
all right.
But thinking about how it was in the beginning to when I moved back home to Southwest Michigan, to the county that I grew up in, I'm working in central dispatch. There's now 3 to 4 of us on at the same time, and the call volume is way up.
Yeah.
So walking into that it was kind of like
Yeah.
walking in and just kind of overwhelming with everything that's going on. And you're seeing someone who is seasoned working it like nobody's business. And I'm standing there thinking, what did I get into?
Right.
Like, this is going to be crazy.
Yeah. No, it got better every day, and that's what
Mhm.
kept me going back. So I was like, I look at something like that, like you said, oh, I watched this person doing it so well, and to me, I go, I want to be that good. Like that to my
Right.
mentality is like, okay, well now I see what I have to do. I got very lucky when I started here, and I had the most phenomenal trainer. She was great. She's still here. She's in our GIS department. She's not on the floor anymore. One of my best friends and nicest person ever. So I got very lucky in that. So she helped, facilitate my success. To this day, I'll always be grateful for her training me.
So then what was that like for you in the beginning? Then you're going through your training, and you start taking phone calls. So let's look at that aspect of it. What was that like for you first? Because in the beginning, you're learning the geography, you're learning
right.
codes, you're learning all this other stuff, but now you're getting into taking calls.
I just always hoped it wasn't going to be a crisis. I was like, can this just be an alarm call, or like, just a simple accident or a lost
Yeah,
dog?
to kind of
Yeah.
slide in, right?
Yeah, I just wanted it to just ease into it, but
Mhm.
it doesn't always go that way. I don't remember like my first call. I wish I
Mhm.
did, but I don't remember it being anything tragic. So I think it was I probably got lucky with something easy, but yeah, I was just always nervous for like the domestics or something that was somebody was in progress or hysterical, because you have to learn how to talk to people, and that takes time, and
Right. Yeah, exactly. And when you're in there, you don't always know exactly what to say.
right.
And it takes, like you said, it takes a few of those calls or more
Yeah.
to get comfortable. And so like for me, in the last agency that I was in, I would say that it took about 3 years for me to fully feel like just I mean, I was confident anyway with certain things, but to feel like I had a complete grasp on everything and could just jump in,
I
it
would
took
agree.
about that
Yeah.
long. Yeah.
Well, things have changed a little bit. Like I started right away, and I started call taking and fire dispatching, and they were together. Like
Mhm.
we didn't have the dedicated call takers, and now our trainees go through 3 months of call taking training where they're not even on the radio. So it was a little more, hey, here's now you're going to fire dispatch and you're going to call take at the same time. So it was tougher, but I think it was beneficial in the end, because all that's doing is, sharpening those multitasking skills by being
Mhm.
able to do both at the same time. So as much as it's easier for them now to focus on one thing, they have a lot more to learn, and we have more towns, and our agency just keeps getting bigger. So I feel bad for them. I'm like, I like the good old days when we only had 8 towns, and now we have
Mhm.
13, but going on 14. So
Yeah, especially if you have like we did at the time. We had some older technology for like our CAD system, and for those who are listening and watching, it's the computer aided dispatch where we're typing in all the information for the complaints and such that the officers are going out to send down to their laptops. And ours was an older one, so when I started, we had to memorize all of the codes, all the incident types, and everything, because in order for this CAD complaint to work, we had to have those main ones in the location to be able to get it to go through.
Okay.
Unless we did it as a what we called a quick call, which was just like your basic address and then narrative, and then you can add the type in later. Um, we had to have all of that stuff in there. So for us, just memorize
Yeah.
everything. But then when we upgraded to a different system and we had newer people coming on, it kind of changed a little bit, where in the training they were telling them that you didn't have to memorize these codes or anything anymore, because
Yeah.
as long as you knew where to find it, you were fine. And I remember sitting with a few people and saying, no, you need to memorize this
Right.
because it'll
If
make
I
you.
had to memorize it, you got to memorize it.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
But it would also make them way faster and more efficient,
Absolutely.
instead of, taking those seconds, because those seconds really do
Right.
add up, especially in 911. In these emergency calls, you need every second possible to be able to, get the information in and get the officer out there. And so, yeah, we would tell them all the time, I don't know who's telling you that,
Right.
but just a little information here, a little tip: memorize your shit, because it's going to
Yeah.
make you better.
Exactly. And it's only fair. They have to. No.
Right.
But I
Yes.
like the theory of knowing where to find the information, though. I agree with that.
Yes.
There is some
Mhm.
things you don't need to memorize, and as long as you know where to get it. But the stuff you need, like you said, in a timely manner, that's the stuff you got to memorize.
Right. Exactly. And so how many people work at a time, or at the same time rather, in the center? Is there like 4 or 5 people, or way more?
Way more. If
Ooh.
you're working day shift, they
Mhm.
have 13 over 14. So from 7 a.m. to 11, they have 13, and then at 11 to 1500, they have 3. Afternoons will always run with 14 all day, and
Oh, man.
midnights works with 11 all night.
So how big is the area that you all cover then? 'Cause that's way bigger than my central dispatch that I was last
Yeah,
at.
I think it's we have 14 municipalities now with us, so I think it's over 250,000 square feet of
That's
and we're adding another one in June of next year, so police and fire department.
So what are some of the cities then that you cover? I guess for those who are watching and listening, to
So
kind of put
we
it more in
are
perspective.
physically in Arlington Heights. Our center
Mhm.
is in Arlington Heights. We dispatch for Arlington Heights and Buffalo Grove, Mount Prospect, Prospect Heights, Elk Grove, Palatine, Inverness, Rolling Meadows, Schaumburg, Hoffman Estates, Streamwood. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Got a couple extra fire departments: Barrington Countryside, Palatine Rural, and then we're taking out Barrington Police and Fire in June.
So when you're sitting in your console on the floor,
Yeah.
and you sit up to look over, what do you see? Is it just like a huge like cube farm, just consoles,
We call them pods.
pods?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So each pod has 6 consoles in it, like
Mhm.
6 working functioning consoles. But usually there's about 4 people in each pod, and we usually use all 3 of them. So yeah. So there's 18 total positions. Each pod, there's 3 pods with 6 positions in them. So
And it's all separated by like fire or EMS or law
we
enforcement, or
we do have we have Hoffman Estates, Schaumburg, and Streamwood. They're like the far south end of our town. So
Mhm.
we keep their fire and police together in the same pod.
Gotcha.
And then the middle one has all remaining fire and 1 police, and then the other 2 on the other side. So they're close by, but yeah, you could still talk to each other and, stand up and say, hey, whatever you need to tell the fire dispatcher. But we try to keep the fire close to each other. So
The reason I ask is because I imagine how big it is in there, and some of the things that we did in the center that I was in, there was let's see, there was 5 consoles. So there was 2 main phones. The one up in the middle kind of by itself was for the supervisor, and then on the other side was our main radio, and then our lean console, which is lean in Michigan, is basically the NCIC part of it,
Oh
where
yeah.
we're running everything.
Yep.
But for us, just being like that, one right from on the other side of the other, we could stand up and say, hey, this person is going that way, still typing it in, but yelling it over
Oh
to
yeah.
get it to them faster. So in bigger centers, I wonder how that dynamic is where you're able to yell over and keep going with phones and radios. But
Well, the
I mean,
good thing is that you have a couple police departments on the same channel. So sometimes, and we try to geographically place them on boundary towns. So you might not need to, because that town's already hearing it if they're going in that direction, like you're saying, having to tell somebody else. Odds are that town might just be right on that same channel and be listening
Nice.
to that. So it works out in that sense. But we got these really annoying messages that we can send to each other that like make a very loud noise, like someone's being, knighted a king. It's just a wand noise, and it'll come up on your screen, and you could just say, hey, read that call, and they can see that instead of yelling across the room to each
Nice.
other.
So
But
it
there's a
that
way.
so our early system that I was telling you about,
Yeah.
we were able to send messages back and forth, but if you typed one thing wrong, it would go to everyone in the center versus who you were directly sending it to.
Oh geez.
And I remember one time, there were 4 of us working. It was on the weekend, and one of our newer guys is on phones with me, and he went to send a message to just the guy on radios and myself, and he typed something in wrong, and it went to everyone. So our supervisor at the time, he was cracking a joke about her, and he had sent a message saying, she's all hot and bothered, ha ha ha. And she stands up and looks over at him and yells his name, and he's like,
Oh geez.
and I said, dude, you sent it to everyone. You didn't just send it to just us.
Right.
And he goes, I'm sorry, saying that to the supervisor.
Oh geez. See, that's why you just gotta text each other nowadays. We don't send anything on CAD. Just send a text to somebody.
Yes, because so she was laughing about it, and she goes, no, you're right, I am hot and bothered, and she's laughing, and she goes, however, if anyone were to pull our
Yeah.
information, like this message and stuff would be out there. So
Yep.
it was also, a learning thing to tell him,
Absolutely.
if you don't want the court or the news to have this,
Yeah.
then don't send it. Don't be a dumbass.
Right. That should be a life goal if you ever go into this career. Is I never want to be on the news. I don't want to be on it for anything good or anything bad. I just never want to hear my voice on the news ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Sending those messages and stuff was that was always something. And I remember one time for myself specifically where I was on the phone and I was sending a message and I just had it on the line. I had not hit enter yet, but I was going to send it to this trooper who was going out to the specific call that I was on. And she had asked me a question. And so I had this message there, and I'm talking to the person on the phone. And for whatever reason, and in the mix of this emergency, talking to the caller, I read over my message again to make sure that what I had on there was what I wanted to
Yeah.
say. And when I spoke to the caller, I read a portion of the message. I said it out loud in response to a question that she
Right.
asked me, and she goes, I'm sorry, what was that? And I bit my lip because I wanted to laugh. And I said, ma'am, I'm really sorry. I said, what I said to you just now is actually a message that I'm sending to one of the officers. I
Yeah.
apologize. And she goes, oh, okay. I just wasn't sure what was going on. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, please don't do quality assurance on this call
Right.
because I'm going to be screwed.
Yes.
Oh man, it was a funny moment. And luckily, if I remember correctly, the call that I was on at the time, it was like a disorderly that had just happened and the person was gone. So my caller
Okay.
wasn't in any danger or anything,
Yeah.
but the trooper was close enough that she was hauling ass to go over there. And I ended up reading that message and I thought, man, I need not to do that again. Next
Yeah.
time I just need to hit enter instead of reading something and then repeating it over the phone.
That's great.
Jeez. Yeah. There's always something that happens in dispatch.
Always.
Always something.
Yeah.
So so you get through your training, and were you a trainer at all or anything as well, or did you just move right up
I
into operations
Oh
manager?
no, 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 no. I mean, I was dispatching for 17 years before I got promoted. So it's
Hmm.
just only been I only been promoted this year. So it was a long time. I took a lot of love towards EMD.
Hmm.
The That was where I was like, I like this. And I asked my boss at the time, I said, can I start doing call review? Because I'm like, I really like the protocol and I want to learn more about it. And we didn't have peer quality assurance. Like you didn't have another dispatcher review your calls. So I think it's been 13 years now that I've been doing it. I came to him in 2007. I was like, I really want to do this. And he's like, all right, let's try it. So I was the first person to do quality assurance as a dispatcher for my peers, and I
Hmm.
kept doing it. And that's why I that's the call they put was a medical call, because that's pretty much what I drank their Kool-Aid from, the academy. And I was like, I like it.
Yeah.
I think it serves a great purpose. And we do EFD as well. And I just got trained to be quality assurance for that 3 years ago. So I kind of stayed in that lane with a lot of one-on-one training, a lot of classes and education, and I went to the conference a lot. The academy conference, and I started teaching there. So 4 years ago I came up with a class, and I keep building on it every year. So the conference is in Nashville, and I just got picked again to teach this class for the fourth installment of the same type of thing with medical protocols. So I
Nice.
did do some training. Probably I trained 4 people, I think, and I
Hmm.
did it towards right when I said I wanted to get promoted. I said, what do I need to do? And they said, you might want to start training people. So I did. It was all right.
Well, so was there anything that happened during your time dispatching such that made you want to do something like this? And the reason I ask is because, there are a lot of folks who I've spoken to have said, I became a trainer, or the inspiration for training and such came from the fact that I had a real good trainer and I wanted to pay it forward. Or there have been the other side of the coin where there have been folks where they were in training and things weren't the greatest for them. They still made it through, but it
Right.
wasn't the greatest training. And that was inspiration for them to be a trainer so that those who were coming up would not have an experience like that. They wanted to show them a better way, and also to keep people there, and just train that next generation of 911. Was there anything that you can think of that really kind of pushed you towards doing that type of training?
I mean, like I said, they told me, hey, if you would like to become an operations manager, one of the things we'd like you to do is start being involved in training.
Hmm.
I did it because that's what they said I needed to do. I personally have never been like, oh, I really want to, I was fortunate with my training experience. I loved my trainers. They were both
Hmm.
great. Um, but I like a more one-on-one type of thing. Like I like taking just the part of, quality assurance. I like that side of training and teaching them something that I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
Not that I'm not passionate about dispatch, but it's hard. It's a lot to sit with somebody every single day and, try to take a new person that doesn't know anything. And
Hmm.
I just know myself, and I know that wasn't going to be my area of where I shined. I enjoyed the people I trained. It was good, but like, I don't think that would have ever been something that I would have put all my eggs in that basket. It
Right.
was, I'm just being honest. It's not that some people are great at it. I don't know if I
Sure.
was the best person for that job, but I did it, and I'm glad I did it because I got to experience it. And a couple of the people I really like, and they're still here. So
Well, that's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, that's really good then. When we look at EMD and these protocols and everything, and call review and all, there are a lot of calls that come in that are sometimes unbelievable, right? You're
yeah.
taking these calls, and sometimes if you're taking multiple ones back to back, I remember being in dispatch and taking back to back CPR calls,
Hmm.
or kids choking,
Yeah,
and those stick with you, especially if they happen early on in your shift.
yeah,
It's in your head for the rest of the shift. Like,
yeah, for
it's
sure.
it's just there. And I remember sometimes I would go through these calls and I would get my cards out and I would just go through them. and go through them and run scenarios in my
Yep.
head because I wanted to be ready. I wanted to be prepared as much as possible because when you're doing CPR instructions, unless you are in a center that all you're doing is medicals, and even
Right.
then, I don't think it's not.
I
There's
hope
not a
I
lot of
hope people aren't dying every
right,
yeah.
right, yeah. There's not a lot of cardiac arrest
Right.
that's going on, so you got to have some of the some more training and such. And for
Yes.
me, it was just going through cards and reading and just doing scenarios in my head. But
I
then,
wish we had 68 of you here because nobody
well, thank you.
they just rather watch Netflix and but
It's just I think it's more so, some of the calls that I took that there were still good calls and I felt that I did well, but I don't and those calls are scary.
yeah.
And just kind of thinking about liability as well. If I don't do this or say this, that's going to come on me. And not just the liability part of it, but that's just going to stick with me in general. And I don't want that to eat at me for the rest of my life. Like, what if I would have done this? Or what if I would have said this? So when I was in dispatch, we were doing quality assurance, but we hadn't started the medical part of it yet.
Okay.
But we were starting to talk about how we were going to implement all of that and start doing more quality assurance on medicals. But I just remember, man, those medicals would come in, and that's a different beast altogether.
Yeah.
So all of this to commend you on on doing review on those calls, because it's one thing to do quality assurance on like domestics and all this
Right.
other stuff. Those are hard to listen to, but a lot of those medicals, a lot of the times they don't turn out that well. And
Right.
so you being the one to review it, you have to hear it and hear it and hear it. And I mean, how does one process all of that?
You become numb. No. I mean, I always tell people they're always I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm afraid I'm gonna do it wrong. I'm gonna get in
Mhm.
trouble. I'm more afraid for you if you do nothing. That's where
Yeah.
if you do nothing, that's when you're gonna get in trouble.
Mhm.
If you're following the protocol, it's there and you're doing what it's expected. You're giving them the minimum standard of care that you're required to do. But
Mhm.
doing nothing and being afraid to do anything that's where I'm like, don't do that. That's terrible. Um, we come up with some recognition program as
Mhm.
well. Every month I have a bulletin board and I put their numbers up there if they were high compliant for both fire and medical for the month. And we also have a portion where we do spotlight calls where they don't necessarily have to be perfect, but it might have just been an odd call that was out of the ordinary and you did a really great job on it. We put their call up there. We give them candy or whatever depending on the person, give them something to reward them. And then
Right.
we've put these calls on a drive so that people can listen to them and so they can hear this is what it should sound like when you take this type of call, or this was an odd call where someone fell off a roof or, something you don't see every day. So we try to teach them that way as well and recognize them, even if it's not perfect, but it was still something that should be recognized. So we came up with that program about 4 years ago, and we're still doing it now to this day. So
See, that's awesome because we had like a high five board
mhm.
and we would put stuff on there. But the crazy thing though is that, we would do that for like a couple of weeks and then nobody would do it afterward. And I
Yeah,
remember thinking, well, are we just not doing this or what? Because just the little sticky note of good job on this call or whatever, I mean, that goes a long way.
yeah,
We don't always need a high five or thanks every single time or good
right.
job or whatever, but man, every so often that kind of puts into perspective why you are there and why you enjoy what you're doing, because we definitely don't do it for the money.
No,
um it's not for the money. We're there to help, and public safety gets into your blood,
yeah,
and it just sticks with you. um I've been out about 8 years, but I was dispatching for 13 and a half, but total now in public safety with everything that I've been doing on the private side, and then now going on my own and doing this full time and all. It's about 20 years now that I've been in
yeah.
public safety, something that I never thought from like high school going up that I would be
Oh yeah,
doing,
me either.
being in public safety. But it's been an amazing experience. Like there's
Yeah,
no, at least for me, I feel like
yeah.
there's no other real job like this, because it's different every day.
I
And
agree.
the incident types might be the same, but the situations are different. And when you
Right.
think you've heard the craziest thing, buckle your seatbelt, because you
Right.
get it comes in with it gets in even more, and you just that seatbelt's on and you just do it. You just
For
go
sure.
and do what you're doing. Now, as you were going through your dispatch career and training and doing all this stuff with EMD and such, I mean, do you remember, I mean, are there any calls that kind of stick with you, and maybe for learning experience, or I guess maybe just anything, are there any of these calls that have stuck with you and you've kind of had to try to manage through or process that call?
Um, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I wish that something great stuck with me, but it's always not the great one that kind of
Right.
sticks with you. I wish
Yeah.
that um I had somebody actually die on the phone with me, so I heard them agonally breathing, and then they didn't make it, and they just didn't get there fast enough, and she didn't
Hmm.
call fast enough, and she was an asthma, patient, and she just should have called sooner and didn't, and I felt bad. That was terrible, but
Do
um,
you do you ever feel like some of these calls that you've taken in all these years that you've been dispatching, that some of them may have been for you, like meant for you to take? And the reason I ask is because there are, and a lot of the people that I've spoken to throughout this time that I've done this podcast, um, there are experiences that we have in life that end up kind of coming up in the sense of some of these calls that we can relate to, and maybe we were better off to be the one to take it because we had that experience, versus someone who might not have ever had that type of experience. They might not have been able to talk to this person the same way or relate. So that's why I ask, like, is there, do you
definitely,
ever feel like
yeah.
you had that?
I had a friend of mine who had a seizure in front of me, and it was super scary, and I'd never seen something like that before.
Mhm.
So, and those callers are always, super panicked, and I get it. It's something frightening to watch, but I feel like I can deal with those because I know what they're looking at, I know what they're seeing, so I feel like I can handle those, and I try to reassure them that as frightening as it looks, they're probably, it's just a scary thing to see, but they're
Mhm.
gonna come out of it. It's gonna, and then they do, and then they're like, "Oh, thank you, you were right." I would hate to be wrong one time, but
Right. Right, but you've had that experience, you
exactly.
you
So
were
I can
there with
relate
your
to it.
friend,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you were able to respond to it better, and it's an interesting thing. This is episode, I think this one is gonna be episode 417, and,
Wow.
out of yeah, yeah, out of all of these episodes and people that I've spoken to, there have been, things like this that are similar, where they've had stuff that has happened with friends or family
Yeah.
or just themselves, and a call comes up, and they were able to handle it a lot better than anybody else because they didn't have that experience.
Right.
Um, also, it's also interesting that just just a little change in the tone of your voice can
Right.
change the phone call.
Absolutely.
How crazy is that?
Ironically, I had to call 911 today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right before I came into work. Girl, we were working out at the gym, and I think she broke her tibia. Like, she tried to drop a barbell, and her knee went out, and everyone was like, "Oh my god!" And they start panicking. I'm like, "All right, I'll call." I'm like, "I got this."
So when you called, was it to your center?
No,
Oh,
no.
okay. So you're calling in, and you get to the center. Do you find yourself
I let her
spitting
do her
out?
thing.
Oh,
I let her
okay.
go. I let her go. I was like, I'm not going to be that person. But I told her at the end of the call, I'm like, "Oh, I work at Northwest Central." And she's like, "Oh, really?" And I'm like, "I just wasn't going to interrupt your flow because I know how it is." So
Yes, yes.
I'm like,
So
you got to ask your stuff. So,
on on the other end of that, I had to call 911 once for this elderly woman who fell. She was staying at this adult care facility, and gosh, I don't even remember how old she was, but they had told her that these one doors closest to where she was parking were going to be closed, so she needed to walk down to the other side, and she's
okay.
carrying two bags full of groceries,
Oh,
and
jeez.
she's very thin and frail, and she ended up losing her balance, and she went face first into the driveway. And I
Oh,
remember my son and I, he probably had to been about 4 or so during this time, and we went outside because I didn't have great phone signal, and we were gonna order Chinese is what we were doing. And he was going outside with me, and we hear, "Someone help me." And I'm looking around, and I look at my son Logan. I said, "Did you hear that?" And he goes, "Yeah, I heard that, but I don't know where it's coming from."
Yeah.
So we're looking, back and forth. Never thought to look down at the time, at that moment. And then we hear it again, and then I look down, and there she is. She's lying in the driveway,
Oh,
close
jeez.
to the road. And like if nobody was paying attention, they would have run right over her. So
Oh, wow.
I tell him to tell his mom that I'm running over, to help this lady, that I'm going to call
Yeah.
911. So he runs one way, I run to help her out, and I call 911 because nobody there. The nurses weren't going to call. They were they were saying, "Oh no, she'll be fine. She does this." I was like, "Look at her forehead,"
Right.
because there was a chunk of skin that was like just kind of flopped over, and she's
Yeah.
bleeding, and I'm going through EMD. And but I wasn't going to move her or anything. You're not supposed to
Right.
move unless they're in danger.
Yep.
And so I went through the whole thing with her, and they're like, "No, we're not going to call." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to call because she needs to get some more attention than what you guys are going to do here, because you're treating her like
Which
crap
is
as it
nothing.
is."
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I call 911, and I start kind of rattling stuff off, and I thought, "Hey, stupid, don't. The person's got to ask you questions."
Right.
So I stopped, and I let her do her thing, and she at one point she goes, "You were giving me information in the beginning. Do you do this?"
Yeah.
Or and I said, "It's Ricardo from Allegan," and she goes, "Oh hey, what's going on?" Because it was a neighboring agency. I
Yeah.
didn't live in the county that I worked in,
Yeah.
but they all knew me, and I knew all of them. But that's why I asked, because there have been some times where I've taken calls from those who are dispatchers or officers or whatever, and they're just going, and I'm just typing as fast as
You
I
can
can. I'm
always
like,
tell. Yeah. Right
yes,
away.
yeah, you can always tell when that
Yep.
stuff is coming in.
And I don't think cops are the best callers.
No,
No.
no, not at all. And to go along with that, when I first started dispatching, there was a pretty bad accident, and I remember this officer calling in the information, and it's proven. When people call in, no matter whether they're in public safety or a doctor or whatever, when someone is calling in with an emergency, they lose all sense of where they're at, who they
Yep.
are. It always happens. And so when he called in, I was trying to tell him who I was, and it wasn't registering.
Yeah.
And his sister, who was also an officer, was actually there. And I remember looking at her, and I said, it's your brother. And she goes, "What?" And she ended up getting the phone as I'm paging out, and he wasn't even registering that was his
No.
sister that he was talking to on the phone. It wasn't until afterwards, like a couple days later, when I saw him, he's like, I had no idea who I had
Wow.
called, because he was kind of on the line of the
Oh,
city and the
between. Yeah.
county. So he didn't even register when I said the name of the city or
Yeah.
anything. It was something else for sure.
Yeah. There was a lot of panic today. Everyone's like, well, what are we going to do? I'm like, her bone is sticking out of her leg. So I'm like, we're going to have to call. I'm like, there's no way we can't.
Right.
I'm like,
We can't just push it in and
right. I'm
wrap
not
it
going to
up.
splint that sucker. So yeah. But I was about to call and I go, I don't know what the address is here. I'm like, so I had to Google the address. I'm like, I know where I drive every day to go work out, but I'm like, I
Right.
don't know their address. So I'm like, I'm not going to be that asshole. I'm like, I'm going to Google his phone number before I call.
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because you end up being that person where
Yeah.
I don't know the address. Okay, do you know any cross streets?
Just send them.
Yes, yes, just send them. And I remember every time I would say, well, almost every time I would say, "Well, what are the cross streets there?" "I
Right.
don't know what you're saying. Like, what does that mean?" "What are the streets that intersect together?"
Right.
Like, what are you trying to ask me? What are the streets that are there? The street
Right.
names. And especially because during that time when I was dispatching, we didn't have what everyone has now or can use, like Rapid SOS or anything
Right.
like that, that it can actually pinpoint locations. We didn't have that. So, in the years that you have been working, how has the technology changed?
Dramatically.
Yeah?
Yeah. I love Rapid SOS. I'm like, I go sell their product on any street corner. That thing is amazing. You can find anyone with that.
Right. Yeah.
I know. And you forget, how do we ever do anything
Mhm.
before that? But I mean, the technology with the Uber app now and the safety that they've put into that, if you ever get into the wrong car. There's like a button on there now, and that I think
Mhm.
that's through Rapid SOS as well. They partnered up with Uber. Yeah, I mean, it was a map, an actual physical map that I had to look at when I first started and try to learn streets that way. And I mean, the people now just don't, they rely so much on a phone. They don't even know, hold on, where are you? Let me check my Google map. I mean, like, still, you should know what street you're driving on. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I would tell my family, and I still do. I tell them all the time, make sure you're aware of where you're at.
Yeah.
Landmarks, streets, cross streets, and
Yeah.
my my brother has said to me before, "Dude, I've got my GPS, man. Like I know, I know you do, but your signal might not always be the best.
Right.
So, how are you going to find yourself?" All right, man, you're right.
And no
Yeah,
directions, no north, south, east, west. I mean, that should be something people should learn still, no matter what.
exactly. Yes.
Basic directions. That's it. That's all you got to do.
Yes. When I was in high school, our teacher, one of our teachers always told us, "Never eat soggy waffles."
Yep.
And that was our, our north, east, south, and west.
Yep. Mine was
Like,
never eat shredded wheat. So there you go. Same
oh,
thing.
nice.
Yep.
Oh, that's funny.
Yep.
So you end up, you're going through these years in dispatch, and you end up doing a lot of the Q&A and call review and such for
Hmm.
medicals, and you end up getting promoted to operations manager. What was that like? What was that transition like, going from dispatch straight up to operations manager? And I asked too because when I became the supervisor, I wasn't a deputy director or anything. I just went to
Right.
supervisor. Even that alone was kind of hard in a way because we were all real good friends. But
Yeah.
now you have to kind of switch that, and that's it's different because now you're in a different position, and you see sometimes on social media when people are getting promotions or even leaving, they have a little party and then they get a
Right.
cake that says you're dead to us now.
Right.
Stuff like that. What was the transition like for you?
Well, first of all, last year in 2020, when I was still dispatching, our supervisors worked from home during COVID. So whenever they're not in the building, we have acting operations managers, and there was only 3 of us on afternoon shift who had to split all those hours during COVID. So I spent a lot of time being fake in charge in 2020. So that helped a little bit, at least in that feeling of just, trying to gain the respect of the people that I work with.
Mhm.
I'm lucky that I spent most of my career on afternoon shift. And when I did get promoted, I stayed on afternoon shift. So it felt a little natural with those people, but it wasn't terrible. I've been very, very lucky so far. I think that everyone seems to be accepting me in a way that I'm excited about. And like I said, last year, spending all that time having them get used to me being the one in charge. And now, yes, I really am, but we also are so short employees right now that I have spent a good part of my first year as an operations manager being a dispatcher. So
It continues.
it does. I mean, we're trying to save overtime, so we count ourselves out on the
Mhm.
floor. So everybody, our ongoing joke is, do you remember when you got promoted and all you have is this office, but really you just work out there? I'm like, yeah. Well, it's just a nice place to put my stuff when I get here, and then I go dispatch. So
Right. What do you think are, I mean, this the whole pandemic and everything obviously got you trained
oh gosh,
for moving into this position that you
yeah.
are now. But so just kind of looking briefly here at staffing, in your opinion, like what do you think the industry needs to do, or what do you think needs to happen in order to kind of, curb the entire I mean, everyone has been short staffed for years now, right?
Right.
It's always happened. Is it more that you think, possibly, that maybe a lot of places don't see it more as a career, versus a stepping stone or something, or
I think that
what
it's
else could it
changing a
be?
lot. I think that people are seeing it as a career now. I think
Hmm.
it um we got stuck with a lot of retirements, a
Hmm.
lot of people that retired even sooner than we thought they would, and COVID. We always do a mass testing for our center. We hold it at a high school and they go there and there's usually 200 to 300 people. We couldn't
Wow.
do that for a year, It's
Yeah,
no
yeah, for sure.
So between that and the people retiring that we knew were coming, it's just we just got too far behind. So we were down, I think, 8 employees. So, but we just finally got a testing going. We just had 3 and we'll end up with 1. So, it's hard,
It's
but now we got 4 more that are just started training this month. So, but again, it's 6 months you're looking at, before
right.
and then we'll probably lose somebody else. So, yeah, I don't know. We do have people stay if they like it. We have a good retention. It's not like we're losing people constantly, but
True,
it's finding them and getting them to want to stay and enjoy this job. But I think it's definitely turning in a positive way. I think people are looking at this as a career, and I think it's looked at now. I don't want to give credit to the stupid TV shows or whatever, but but they're shining a light on this career. It's more than just, just something that somebody who's, never seen but heard. It's becoming more in the forefront. People are thinking, hey, this might be something. And you got to pay the people to be, give them the money for the job they're doing, because this job is hard and people deserve to be paid for this job.
For sure.
Like police and fire,
Yeah, you see a lot of just for example, like fast food restaurants or other places that don't have the same type of pressure, that are paying more than some centers where they start out, and people split, or they go, a lot of I've seen go into like real estate or insurance or other things like that. But I also I agree. It's definitely changed a lot from towards the end of when I was in dispatch, or even the beginning, people looking at it as a career. And I remember towards the end saying to people like, this is a career. And then it was different though, for me in a way though, because then I ended up leaving. And I remember some of the ones who stayed were like, well, why are you leaving? You said this was a career. Like, it is a career. I said, but I feel like there's more that I can do with what it is that I've created. And I need to explore that, because I'm the type of person that I don't want to have any regrets in life, and I don't want to miss any opportunities. I don't want to be that old man years from now saying, damn, I wish I would have tried that. I wish I would have done something. I want to be the old man years from now saying, I did it. Like, I took a shot and I did it, whether I failed or success. Either way, I was going to learn from it, and that's what I wanted to do. And I've been pushing it and trying to do as much ever since, trying to give back to the industry. So it's been really, really good. But like I said, I agree that it's completely changing into where people are looking this more at it as a career. But man, there's got to be something that can be done, whether it be for centers to be able to pay their dispatchers more or different benefits. I don't know. A lot of people are saying that the reclassification as well would really push all of this forward.
I agree.
And how do we continue to fight for that? I know a lot of people are fighting for it, and people are doing it statewide, which is good, to be able to do it. But what more can we do? Like, that's the big question.
I mean, our director and assistant director here actually teach a class at community college, and it's like all about dispatch, and it like teaches them exactly what this is. And we've gained a lot of employees from their class. And
that's awesome.
Illinois is now making anyone that's getting hired from now out, we have to take a certification class. And if you are hired after a certain date, now you'll have to take a 40-hour course. Glad I don't have to do that. But we will, anyone who's working right now will have to take this test just to have a certification in Illinois. So I think that they're getting there, we're doing things that are requiring a little more to just do this job than just a high school degree and say, I think I want to be a dispatcher. So I like that they're at least putting a little more behind it. And we're very fortunate here. I think we're one of the higher paid centers in Illinois. So I think we do pay people what they're worth. I just think everyone needs to be doing that as well, because it's a hard job.
Right. Yeah. And I agree as well that, some of the, like you had said too, not to give it full credit or anything, but the 2 most recent shows, I would say, the ones that are actually more of a reality base, that are actually showing what's going on in the center, I think those have contributed to, making and showing, not so much making, because it is a cool job, showing how good it is. how crazy it is, how, stressful that it can be. But I have had people send in messages saying that just listening to the show and listening to dispatchers and call takers share their stories has inspired them to want to do the same thing, because it sounds like something they would love to do, because they want to
Yeah.
give back and they want to do more. So I think a lot of stuff like that is definitely, open the eyes of everyone out there to show them what it is really like, but also what it is that you're getting into. Because I think some of that also cuts down on some of those folks who think that all we're doing is answering the phone.
Yeah.
And then when they get to a certain part of training, when they get on phones and they're like, yeah, I'm not going to do this, I can't do this,
Right.
it's cutting a lot of that out, I feel like.
And I'd rather weed them out early, you know what I mean, than wait and push them through training and then they say, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. So
Right. Yeah. It sounds like you've been there. We were there as well, where we had 9 people. We were so short staffed. So we had 9 people who were coming in. And I remember being on backup phones and radios, and they bring all these folks in, and I'm sitting there and they're introducing each one of them. They're like, they're all going to be starting. By the way, all of you are turning into trainers,
oh God.
because we need to get them through training
Right.
as fast as possible. And only 2 people out of those 9 made it.
Yeah.
And they, like, I remember one person specifically, which kind of blew through all of the geography and the codes and all of that stuff, but it's that first phone call, they were out.
Yeah.
They didn't want to do it anymore. So yeah, I agree, weeding them out early.
Memorization isn't going to get you through this job. Yeah. Just being able to memorize
Right.
something. No.
Yes. Yeah, there's
No.
way more to it. And I also like, though, that now with people going in, there's so many more resources there.
Yeah.
Because when I started in 2001, nobody told me how to, or that I was going to might have an issue with handling some of these calls. It was just, you take the call and you move on. You move
Right.
on to the next one. There was no talk about mental health and wellness.
Oh yeah.
Nothing like that. It was years later that I learned on my own the hard way on how to deal with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, we have developed a peer support program. I think about in the last year and a half, 2 years here. It's just a group of dispatchers, and then another supervisor runs it. And it's nice just to let people know that, if you just want to talk about it, and we're the people to talk to because we understand what's going on.
Mhm.
Me personally, about 4 years ago, I was like, I don't know if I could do this job anymore. That's where I hit my wall, and I was like, I'm not sure what to do. I talked to my husband. I'm like, I can't talk to these people on the phone anymore. It's just like everyone was making me angry, and like I don't want to be that person that's like full of rage. So I mean, I reached out to our IEP, and I went and talked to somebody because I was like, I don't know what to do, but I can't keep going on like this. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to shift my focus. I want to maybe get promoted, and I started thinking about ways to stay in this field, but maybe not be on that phone every day and not be starting to get that burnout. And I think it was helpful. This woman was, she was very nice, very helpful. I spent some time with her and, tried to reshift my focus, and it worked. And I think that people shouldn't be afraid to do that. It's that, or you're going to end up something worse, so
Right.
I'm not afraid to say I did, you know what I mean? And I had to. I was on the edge.
See, this is good to hear, because there are a lot of people who won't say, and I think it's good for us to have conversations like this where people are saying that they finally decided that they were just going to go ahead and ask for help. I was one of those dispatchers who buried my calls. I held everything in, which I learned the hard way that wasn't the best thing to do, because I thought I was leaving it at work, which was bullshit, because I was I was still bringing it home with me, just kind of not talking, it's just kind of being standoffish. So I finally just didn't give a shit about what people were going to think of me if I asked for help.
Yeah.
So, I was talking more, and for me, it was therapeutic to write it out and then talk about it. And, this podcast was started back in college when I hit my rut, when I hit my burnout stage, and I was trying to find a way to reignite this passion for 911 that I have. I love the job, but there was just things, kind of like you, it was just affecting me, and there was an impact, and I wanted to do something different. So I had to shift my mind as well.
Yeah.
So it's been amazing to have you on here and learn
Thank
more
you.
about you. And again, congratulations on being the 2020 Dispatcher of the Year through the IAED, and
Thank you.
the call and everything that you take, and now moving up into operations manager. As we go into the wrap up of this episode, one final question, and the question is, throughout this long career that you've had, all this stuff that you've done, if you could go back in time and talk to yourself, what would you tell yourself about this job? Like, if there was any advice that you could give yourself in the beginning, stuff that you know now that you didn't know then, what would you tell yourself?
To not take things personally, other people's rage, other people's, bad day, other police officers' bad days, the stuff over the radio where you think somebody's being mean to you personally. It's not to you. It's either whatever's happening on the street or whatever is happening on that phone call. Like, don't take things to heart. It's not really against you. It's just them having a bad day or having a crisis, and you have to just learn how to let a lot of that stuff roll off your back. That would help me.
Perfect. Thank you so very much again for
Thank
being
you.
on and for sharing your story. I appreciate it more than you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I will be right back here with you in just a moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that is going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital, Rapid Deploy, as well as Carbine. And if you're looking for any bonus content, you can check us out and support us. And it's going to be patreon.com/WTT podcast. There's a lot of bonus episodes and everything that are going up for there. So make sure to check that out. Again, it's patreon.com/WTT podcast. This can be seen on Facebook as well as Twitter and YouTube, and can be heard 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.